The charge was leveled first when you claimed I lacked the necessary credentials. Dan Bongino commanded the center of the CNN studio in Los Angeles at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. 300 spectators crammed into a room built for audience interaction, half clad in red and half in blue, all primed for a clash. Cameras surrounded them while the hot lights beamed down on Jake Tapper, who sat between them, attempting to project an authority he did not possess. Tonight, however, Bongino's voice held a specific resonance. That unmistakable tone of a law enforcement officer. It was not loud or hostile, yet it possessed an absolute finality that suggested we both know how this concludes. You called me unqualified, ignoring that I am a former NYPD officer and Secret Service agent who protected presidents and worked for a living. Maxine Waters sat opposite him, radiating a confidence forged over 30 years in Congress without facing genuine repercussions. She wore the expression of someone who has evaded consequences for a lifetime, a look that implied she had handled far worse than him. However, Bongino leaned in slightly to shift the dynamic. If you wish to discuss qualifications, let us examine your 30 years in Congress while your district deteriorated. Let us discuss how you utilized your position to bail out the bank associated with your husband. We should also address the payment of over $1 million of campaign funds to your daughter. Let us mention your residence in a $6 million Beverly Hills mansion while you represent South Central Los Angeles. He paused to let the silence hang in the air while 300 people held their breath. Waters shifted her position ever so slightly, but Bongino noticed the subtle movement immediately. Years of analyzing suspects and criminals allowed him to see everything that was happening. He turned directly to the camera to address the viewers watching from their homes. What you are about to witness is simple, comprising 5 scandals and 5 clear examples of corruption. These are 5 reasons why this woman should have faced prosecution years ago rather than remaining in Congress. We will cover bank bailouts, payoffs to family members, mansions in Beverly Hills, and the incitement of violence. She will answer for 30 years of this conduct right here and right now with no possibility of escape. The energy in the studio shifted to become electric and dangerous, signaling this was an interrogation rather than a debate. Bongino smiled, though it was not friendly, resembling the look a cop gives when he knows he possesses the evidence. It was the expression of someone who knows the suspect is guilty, and that the formalities are all that remain before handcuffs. If you have been waiting for someone to finally ask Maxine Waters the questions no one else dares to, share this broadcast. Hit that button, because what I am about to present is not a theory or an opinion. It is documented fact and evidence of the sort that sends people to prison. He picked up a thick folder filled with documents and proof, signaling that it was time to begin. Bongino wasted no time with a build-up, launching an immediate attack as is common in interrogations. "Let me explain something to you, Congresswoman," he said, while emphasizing the title to make it sound nearly insulting. "You remember the 2008 financial crisis when banks were failing everywhere and community institutions were dying?" He began pacing with the energy of a radio host while noting that Congress was deciding who lived and who died. Decisions regarding who received taxpayer money were matters of life and death for thousands of businesses and millions of jobs. Waters attempted to interrupt by raising her hand in her signature move, but he was not finished. "I am not aggressive, just final, reminding you that you sit on the Financial Services Committee making these decisions. You possess power, access, and influence," which he noted while stopping his pacing to face her directly. "You also have a husband named Sidney Williams, who sits on the board of One United Bank. That bank was failing and desperate. in dire need of a government bailout to survive. The sarcasm dripped heavily from his voice as he asked about the odds of such a coincidence. So let me ask you a simple question that requires only a yes or no answer. Did you arrange a meeting between Treasury officials and one United Bank? Waters reached for her pearls in an unconscious gesture that Bongino immediately noted as a tell. She claimed she followed proper procedures, but he cut her off by stating that was not a yes or no. Not yelling, but speaking with pure police authority, he demanded to know if she arranged the meeting. The situation required a direct answer, and the studio fell into complete silence. 300 people, the cameras, and the crew all stopped to wait and watch. Her voice emerged smaller than before as she admitted to facilitating communication between the parties. "You arranged it," he stated, not as a question, but as a fact regarding her abuse of power. "You used your position to secure a meeting for your husband's failing bank with the Treasury." 1 week later, $12 million of taxpayer money went to save that specific bank. He pointed at the audience to emphasize that it was their money saving her husband's financial interests. He walked toward the audience and stood among them to ask a poignant question. "How many of you know someone who lost a business in 2008? He asked while requesting a show of hands. Hands went up, scattered throughout the room, representing people who had lost savings and businesses. Bongino pointed at them and noted that they did not receive meetings or bailouts. They did not have Maxine Waters intervening for them, so they simply lost everything they had. While your husband's bank was saved with their money, that is not complicated to understand. That is corruption. Simple and plain. At least where I come from." She tried to defend herself by claiming other banks also received funds, but her voice was defensive. He countered that other banks were not married to members of Congress, his voice rising with intensity. "That is the difference and the crime, as you used your position to benefit your family." Waters tried her signature move again, raising her hand to reclaim her time. "You do not have time to reclaim," Bongino said louder now, refusing to back down. "The people of California have been waiting for answers for 15 years, and now you will answer." The studio erupted with noise as 300 people realized they were witnessing something real. Jake Tapper tried to interject to maintain order, but nobody was listening to him. Bongino produced documents and held them up, citing the Ethics Committee report. "Your own Ethics Committee found that you intervened and that your husband's bank benefited. Problems were documented, yet absolutely nothing happened in response to those findings." He walked back to center stage to break the situation down for everyone watching. Small banks across California and America that served communities failed and received nothing. However, one special bank where Maxine Waters' husband sat on the board received $12 million. The person who arranged it used her congressional power to save her family's investment. He pointed at her, calling her the Beverly Hills Marxist who lives in luxury while preaching about poverty. "You use the public's money to save your family's wealth, while Waters could not maintain eye contact." She looked down at her notes and hands, avoiding the cameras and the audience watching her squirm. Bongino saw the break in her armor, recognizing the moment when a suspect starts to crumble. "In my time in the Secret Service, we investigated financial crimes and corruption involving personal gain. I have seen it and arrested people for it, so I know exactly what it looks like." He leaned forward to close the distance, creating the atmosphere of an interrogation room. "This is corruption that is documented and proven on the record." Someone in the audience shouted to arrest her, and others soon joined the chant. Waters' hands were visibly shaking now as she tried to raise them to stop the noise. Her authority and power were gone, leaving just a politician facing accusations she could not deny. Bongino let the audience express the anger he had validated before raising one hand to command silence. That is round one, demonstrating that your tax dollars saved her family's bank while small banks died. If you are angry about Congress using your money to bail out their families, share this comment. He picked up another folder that was thicker than the first to address the next topic. Let us talk about her daughter and the $1 million from campaign funds she received. Your donations went to her daughter for years, causing Waters' face to go pale. The first folder was bad, but she knew this one was significantly worse. Bongino's energy shifted to sarcasm, bringing out his radio host edge. We have established corruption regarding the bank bailout and family enrichment using taxpayer money. But wait, he paused to build tension, because there is so much more to discuss. He walked toward Waters as she shifted uncomfortably in her seat, looking for non-existent exits. Let me tell you about Karen Waters, Maxine's daughter, whom I have never met. I know her bank account, however, and it is incredibly healthy. That is because her mother has been paying her from campaign funds. These are donations from people who thought the money was going to fight for their district. Instead, the money went to her daughter, totaling over $1 million. He faced the camera to emphasize that the figure was not a typo or a mistake. I am just a former cop who used to protect presidents and worked for a living. Where I come from, taking donations meant for campaigns and giving them to family is theft. That is called embezzlement and fraud, regardless of how you try to spin it. Waters tried to mount a defense with a shaking voice, claiming these were legitimate campaign expenditures. Bongino actually laughed at the suggestion that $1 million to her daughter was legitimate. He pulled out FEC filings, which are public record and undeniable. Karen Waters runs something called slate mailers, which are essentially flyers listing endorsed candidates. These might cost 50 grand to produce, yet Maxine Waters paid her daughter over $1 million. She paid this consistently over years, always to family and always for enrichment. He turned to the audience to ask how many of them had donated to political campaigns. Many hands went up from regular people and small donors who believed in the cause. You thought that money went to ads or staff to fight for your interests. What if I told you it went to the candidate's daughter for family enrichment instead? Murmuring started in the crowd, growing angry and spreading throughout the studio. Bongino turned back to Waters to say he meant zero respect with his comment. Your daughter has gotten rich off your political career, taking over $1 million. This money came from small donors and families struggling to make rent. Waters tried to claim her daughter provides valuable services, but he cut her off immediately. Other campaigns pay perhaps $50,000 for slate mailers, while you have paid over $1 million. That is 20 times more for the same service, and he asked how that works. Waters could not answer the silence, so he answered for her. It is family enrichment and using your position to make your family wealthy. It is taking money from people who believed in you and giving it to those who share your DNA. He walked back among the audience, noting that these people trusted her with money they did not have. They sent $20 or $50, thinking it would help their community and district. Instead, it helped Karen Waters buy a house and live a comfortable life on their donations. His voice crescendoed as he noted the money came from people who clip coupons and worry about bills. Your daughter got rich, and their donations bought nothing but her bank account. The audience erupted in booing and shouting, demanding refunds for the fraud. Waters covered her face with her hands in a defensive and guilty gesture. Bongino saw it and knew exactly what it meant from his time investigating financial crimes. I have seen money laundering and embezzlement, and I know what this is. This is textbook fraud. Taking money under false pretenses for personal gain. Waters opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out, leaving her in a defensive posture. Jake Tapper asked if the Congresswoman would like to respond, but Bongino interrupted. She cannot respond because the numbers are public record in the FEC filings. It is documented payment by payment, always to Karen Waters and always for enrichment. He turned to the camera to tell the 10 million people watching that this is what swamp creatures do. They preach about representing the poor and then use your money to make their families rich. Waters was shrinking now, her dominance gone, as she sat exposed and guilty. With all due respect, your daughter is a millionaire from campaign funds provided by small donors. South Central struggles with crime and poverty, while your daughter remains wealthy and comfortable. The studio was on its feet now, engaged in what was no longer entertainment, but real exposure. Waters sat with her hands over her face, shoulders hunched in a defensive stance. That is 2 scandals involving bank bailouts and daughter payoffs, both using your money. If you are angry and want to know where your money went, share this to show corruption. He picked up another folder, even thicker than the previous ones, to discuss where she lives. The Beverly Hills Marxist lives in a $6 million mansion while representing South Central. Waters looked up with real fear in her eyes because she knew there was no defense. Bongino's tone changed to mockery mixed with disbelief as he pulled out a map. District 43 in California includes South Central, Watts, and Compton, some of the poorest communities. That is her district, and those are the people who have voted for her for 30 years. He let that sink in before stating that Maxine lives in Beverly Hills. It is not adjacent to Beverly Hills, but in a $6 million mansion within it. He walked toward Waters to ask when the last time was that she spent a night in South Central. Waters tried to argue the relevance, but he insisted it was a simple question. She could not answer, so he stated she never sleeps among the people she represents. You live in luxury, far away from the poverty you preach about and the crime you ignore. He turned to the audience to explain that as an NYPD officer, he lived near the people he served. Public servants live with the people, not away from them in exclusive enclaves. You advocate for the poor from a mansion while lecturing about inequality from the top 1%. Waters tried to deflect by claiming many representatives live outside their districts. Bongino's voice rose to say that many representatives do not preach about poverty while accumulating millions. He walked among the audience asking how many lived in the area they worked or served. Most hands went up because normal people live near their work and community. Maxine is not normal, however, as she is special and elite in Beverly Hills. Her constituents in South Central average $30,000 a year while struggling with failing schools. Their congresswoman lives in a mansion where the average home price is $4 million. Waters tried to use anger, claiming she dedicated her life to service, but Bongino exploded. You dedicated your life to getting rich and living in luxury while your district suffers. The people of California, South Central, Compton, and Watts are watching and want to know why. Why does their congresswoman live in Beverly Hills instead of living with them? You are not one of them, and you never were, having used them for their votes. You used their poverty as a platform to get rich and leave them behind. He produced property records showing the contrast between her luxury and South Central's poverty. The side-by-side images were devastating, showing $6 million for her versus $30,000 for them. The audience got louder and angrier as the visual proof became undeniable and damning. You are worth millions, while your constituents live in poverty and worry about rent. You are safe and wealthy in Beverly Hills while they struggle in South Central. Waters could not look at him or the cameras, shrinking into the role of the accused. That is hypocrisy and fraud, taking their votes and giving them nothing but more poverty. It kills me that you are rich, while preaching against wealth and attacking luxury. You are a fraud, and a Beverly Hills Marxist benefiting from the system you claim to fight. The studio erupted in a standing ovation for the truth and exposure of what everyone suspected. Waters put her head down, broken and destroyed, as her aggressive persona vanished. That makes 3 scandals, including the bank bailout, daughter payoffs, and the mansion. He opened another folder that was darker and more serious to talk about violence and incitement. This one is personal because I spent my career protecting people she put in danger. Waters looked up terrified because she knew this accusation was captured on video. Bongino's demeanor shifted from mockery to the seriousness of a protective police officer. In the Secret Service, our mission was to protect the president and officials from threats. You called for the exact opposite, urging harassment, confrontation, and violence against them. He played a video from June 2018 where she told people to create a crowd. She told them to push back on cabinet members in restaurants and department stores. He paused the video to let the words hang there, repeating them slowly for effect. Those are your words telling people to harass government officials, not peaceful protest. Create a crowd means mob action, and pushing back implies physical confrontation. You told them to tell officials they are not welcome anywhere in public spaces. People listened to you, creating crowds and harassing officials while scaring their children. He displayed news reports of the Secretary of Homeland Security being threatened at dinner. The White House press secretary was kicked out of a restaurant because of your call to action. Senators were surrounded at airports because you told people to create crowds. You incited this harassment, and families were terrified because of your words. Waters claimed she was talking about peaceful protest, but Bongino exploded at the lie. You said to push back, and that they are not welcome, which are threatening words. In my time protecting presidents, we dealt with real threats from people who felt justified. People like you give them permission and justification to create crowds and push back. Waters tried to cite the First Amendment, but he reminded her it does not protect incitement. I am a cop and I know the law, and you clearly crossed the line. He asked the audience if they had ever been threatened or harassed for their beliefs. Hands went up, acknowledging the fear and intimidation that makes people afraid to speak. People like Maxine Waters create that fear and cause that harassment with their words. In the Secret Service, we knew that words have consequences, and who hears them matters. You told people to harass officials, and they did, resulting in direct consequences. When families got scared and children cried, you did not apologize or take it back. He played more video of her doubling down and being proud of the incitement. The audience fell into a heavy silence, realizing this was about safety and physical harm. You put real people and their families in danger because you were angry about politics. Waters was openly crying now, tears of guilt from someone who knows they were caught. In my time as a cop, we arrested people who incited violence and put others in danger. We did not excuse it because of political disagreements, yet you got away with it. You should have been arrested because incitement is a prosecutable crime on the books. The people remember the danger and the harassment you caused to regular workers and families. The audience erupted in raw anger at the realization of her abuse of power. Waters sat broken and scared, knowing she was completely exposed. That is 4 scandals documented and proven, including inciting violence that hurt people. If you know anyone who has been harassed, share this to show the consequences. He picked up the final, thickest folder to discuss her 30 years in Congress. This is the total picture and the knockout blow regarding 3 decades of corruption. Waters looked up terrified, knowing there was no escape from her 30-year record. Bongino looked performatively tired from seeing too much fraud and corruption. Maxine Waters has been in Congress since 1991, when the Internet was brand new. He walked slowly, asking what South Central looked like 30 years ago. It was poor, with high crime and failing schools, plagued by infrastructure problems. 30 years later, after her representation, it looks exactly the same, or worse. Poverty and crime are higher, while schools and infrastructure are still crumbling. The only things that got better were your bank account and your house. She could not respond, sitting there crying and finished as a politician. He displayed statistics showing the stagnant or worsening rates in South Central over time. 30 years ago, she was worth maybe $1 million, but now she has multiple millions. The contrast is stark, showing someone who helped herself instead of the people. You have had 30 years to serve, yet your constituents have nothing to show for it. They have the same poverty and struggle, waiting for help that never arrives. For you, it has been 30 years of success and family enrichment, while they suffer. The people want to know what has improved after 3 decades of your leadership. The answer is nothing, while you have gained everything from your time in office. It is a pattern of using public office for private gain that defines your career. He walked to center stage to state that she had an entire career to serve. Instead, you made yourself rich and your daughter a millionaire while South Central struggled. That is not public service. It is theft and corruption using people for gain. The studio stood up to witness the destruction of someone who abused power for decades. Waters had her head down, broken, and not even trying to defend herself anymore. 5 scandals were exposed, covering bailouts, payoffs, mansions, violence, and 30 years of failure. He faced the main camera to tell America that this is what the swamp looks like. This is the result when someone gains power and never faces consequences until tonight. Share this everywhere, because corruption does not expose itself without someone asking questions. Tonight, someone finally demanded answers, and the audience erupted in thunderous applause. It was applause for truth and accountability, arriving after 3 long decades. Waters sat destroyed, her career as an aggressive matriarch effectively over. The show ended with her broken and Bongino victorious while America watched. The video went viral immediately, reaching millions of views and trending worldwide. Conservative media exploded with praise while liberal media struggled to defend the undeniable evidence. Her office stopped answering phones as staff quit in a mass exodus to avoid association. The squad remained silent, offering no support as the Progressive Alliance crumbled. Nancy Pelosi released a brief statement telling Waters she must address the serious allegations. Ethics complaints were filed immediately, leading to a formal investigation by the House. A primary challenger from South Central announced his campaign, striking while she was wounded. He highlighted the devastating contrast between her mansion and the district's poverty. Fundraising for the challenger exploded, with small donations from people demanding change. Polling showed him leading by massive margins as the truth spread. Campaign donors demanded refunds, feeling betrayed that their money went to her daughter. Waters deleted her social media and went into hiding in her Beverly Hills mansion. Her approval rating collapsed, marking the fastest political implosion in California history. Community leaders called for her resignation, demanding someone who actually lives with them. The community she represented for 30 years finally turned against her completely. Bongino became a hero, his ratings tripling as he stuck to his simple message. "I just asked the questions that journalists and committees should have asked years ago." Trump called to congratulate him on the total destruction of her political career. Waters had no exit strategy, as think tanks and companies rejected her damaged brand. She was left completely alone, her 30-year legacy destroyed in 2 hours. Her Wikipedia page was updated to reflect her controversial record and corruption allegations. She did not lose. She was exposed for being corrupt and self-serving. Small donors told stories of betrayal, receiving refunds, and finding justice at last. South Central organized without her, and real progress finally began to take root. The conservative movement used her as a symbol of everything wrong with corrupt politicians. Bongino used the victory to launch bigger platforms, consistent in his method of asking questions. Waters learned that eventually, evidence gets shown and truth matters more than power. The Beverly Hills Marxist learned this the hard way in front of the world. Justice arrived after 3 decades, proving that accountability is devastating when it hits. If watching this gave you satisfaction, hit the like button and share it now. Let everyone see what happens when a former cop asks the right questions. Comment below on whether she should face prosecution and who should be exposed next. We are just getting started, so subscribe because there are plenty more to come.